Kamala's audience squirms as she yaks about pachyderms. Our video of the day comes to us from the former VP who made her first major speech last night since Trump took office. And it was another classic ball of verbal vomit.
Kamala Harris just got roasted so hard you could almost see the smoke from space. And guess who brought the heat? Yep, Greg Gutfeld. If you thought late-night TV had lost its spark, Gutfeld just gave it a jolt and sent the conversation into overdrive. From awkward laughs to confusing answers, this takedown had plenty of moments people couldn't stop talking about. So stick around, because what Gutfeld pulled off wasn't just politics, it was comedy, commentary, and pure entertainment rolled into one. Let's get into it.
Here she is referencing a viral video of elephants. Watch.
Who saw that video from a couple of weeks ago? The one of the elephants at the San Diego Zoo during the earthquake? And as soon as they felt the earth shaking beneath their feet, they got in a circle and stood next to each other to protect the most vulnerable. Think about it. What a powerful metaphor.
It's almost like they built a wall.
So, Kamala Harris stepped up to another public speaking event and somehow managed to leave clarity and straight answers behind once again. It was the kind of performance that makes you wonder if she's training for a championship nobody else can see. And just when people thought they'd gotten used to the haze surrounding her public appearances, along comes Greg Gutfeld, armed with razor-sharp sarcasm and absolutely no tolerance for speeches that seem to go nowhere.
Kamala Harris has created her own scented candle. And just like her, it gets lit every night. She's a drunk. Kamala seems to have suddenly remembered that we actually have a border. For she's announced she's going to the border. True, after 4 years of denying there's a border crisis. What's changed? Why the 180? Do you suppose it's the polls?
Let's be honest. Kamala's speech was meant to inspire, motivate, and sound presidential. Instead, it felt like a complicated maze of words that never quite found the exit. At some point, people stopped following along and started checking their phones, wondering if the signal had suddenly dropped. Then came Greg, watching the whole thing unfold like someone who accidentally wandered into a political comedy show and decided it was too entertaining to leave.
Kamala Harris will visit the southern border on Friday. She said she's looking forward to finally meeting Justin Trudeau. Speaking of Harris, at the last debate, she said she was a middle-class kid. However, it appears Harris enjoyed things most middle-class kids didn't, like living abroad, private school, at some of the wealthiest places on earth. The only thing she didn't enjoy was a nanny, unlike her husband.
Greg didn't need a prepared script. He didn't need a teleprompter either. All he really needed was Kamala being herself. The non-stop stream of familiar buzzwords, broad optimism, and vague inspirational talk practically created the jokes on their own. He took one look at the speech and treated it like material for a comedy set, with the biggest laugh coming from how seriously the former vice president seemed to expect the audience to take every word.
Not to mention, Trump is the wall candidate, not Cackle's McKnee pads. Stern got even more pathetic, wondering how she doesn't nap.
When you said you don't nap, I get it, because like what you've taken on is extraordinarily difficult. And I mean, do you feel the pressure of the moment in the sense that, like when I met you out in the hall, I said, I'm really nervous because I want this to go well for you. I want it to go well for the country.
Hold on. I need a minute. All right, we're back.
This wasn't just commentary, it was a full-on roast. Gutfeld turned every pause into a punchline and every cliche into comedy material. His reactions alone told half the story, with expressions that ranged from amused disbelief to complete confusion. While Harris delivered broad themes and optimistic slogans, Gutfeld picked apart the speech with sharp humor and relentless sarcasm. By the end, it felt less like political analysis and more like a comedian finding endless material in a speech that practically wrote the jokes for him.
You know, maybe they can circle around your husband, Doug, to protect vulnerable nannies. But Kamala brought that long-winded story in for a landing with this poignant lesson.
Because we know those who try to incite fear are most effective when they divide and conquer, when they separate the herd, when they try to make everyone think they are alone. But in the face of crisis, the lesson is don't scatter.
So powerful. But wouldn't it be more powerful with bongos?
Because we know those who try to incite fear are most effective.
While many praised Kamala's speech, Greg saw it very differently. Every metaphor and inspirational line became fresh material for his sharp humor. He questioned the message, poked fun at the delivery, and turned confusing talking points into punchlines. Armed with sarcasm and quick wit, he cut through what he viewed as vague slogans and empty rhetoric. By the end, it felt less like political commentary and more like a comedy roast, with Greg keeping the laughs coming while challenging the speech's biggest themes.
It's hard to kind of figure out what she's saying. Why doesn't anybody ever ask a follow-up question? Like, what do you mean?
Well, that should have happened in the debate.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, doesn't do interviews. You would not see her come onto the show, I can tell you right now.
We ask her now. Come on this show, Kamala. We'll have a box of wine.
She doesn't like doing it.
But Greg Gutfeld didn't stop at the speech itself. He went after the entire public image surrounding Kamala Harris. From the laugh to the gestures and the way she presents her ideas, nothing was off limits. With sharp humor and perfect timing, he turned those moments into comedy material that kept the audience engaged. His approach wasn't just about pointing out awkward moments, it was about building a bigger story around them. Greg took situations many people found confusing and turned them into punchlines, using sarcasm and storytelling to highlight what he saw as the gap between inspiring rhetoric and clear communication.
Well, first, I want to point out something Jessica said, that Trump began as a millionaire and now he's a billionaire. I think that makes him an expert in this. I would rather listen to somebody who began as a millionaire and is now a billionaire than somebody who doesn't have a damn clue about economics. I've never heard a candidate today more unsure of themselves on a topic than Kamala Harris. I think she's been burdened by the weight of expectations put on her by the media. I've never seen a better campaign ad for Trump. She's campaigning better for Trump than Trump is.
He mixes in facial expressions, tangled metaphors, and that strangely overdone enthusiasm like a puzzle made of soft noodles. It's funny not because it's harsh, but because it's so exact. Every moment feels like déjà vu for anyone who's watched her interviews and wondered if the point was unclear, or if there was ever a clear point at all. Somehow it turns into comedy relief for people watching politics, which feels like it's endlessly buffering. And he wasn't alone. Millions tuned in not just to analyze, but to finally hear someone say what many were already thinking, that Kamala Harris delivers speeches like she's assembling IKEA furniture without the manual. Greg is the one holding up the leftover piece saying, "Something's missing here." What makes it work is that it isn't angry or overly political. It's observational comedy with a sharp edge, like George Carlin in a blazer with C-SPAN running in the background. And Kamala, intentionally or not, becomes the perfect setup, like a contestant in a game where the rules keep changing mid-round. But he doesn't stop there. Greg breaks down pauses like a critic analyzing an abstract film. He points out those moments where she seems to be searching for the next sentence like it's just out of reach.
We'll go back to you, Vice President Harris. You flip-flopped on a lot of issues. How can voters be sure you won't keep doing that if you're elected?
Look, again, I come from a middle-class family, right? My values have never changed on that, right? I've talked about my grass being green for quite some time now. All right, and as a former, prosecutor and former state attorney general and, Willie Brown's ex, shout out to my brothers and sisters, right?
He zoomed in on the audience's confusion, tilted heads, forced smiles, people checking their phones like it was a fire drill escape plan. It was almost too perfect. He even broke down her Twitter feed, a chaotic archive of vague inspiration and tangled phrasing. One post sounded like it was generated by an AI trained only on motivational posters. Greg read it out like a bedtime story for tired voters. Somewhere, a PR intern definitely felt it. What pushed it further wasn't just the jokes, it was how he framed it. He didn't just roast Kamala, he placed her in context. He painted an administration so eager for energy that they handed the mic to someone who makes clarity feel like a struggle. His humor came less from anger and more from genuine disbelief, the kind you get when someone says something wildly abstract and fully means it. He didn't shout or rant. He just looked at the camera, paused, blinked, and let the absurdity sit there. And somehow, that silence landed harder than any punchline. Of course, not everyone loved it. The usual critics came out quickly, accusing Greg of disrespecting public office, as if Kamala hadn't already confused things herself by explaining democracy like a yoga instructor describing Mercury in retrograde.
About Joe, but what about Kamala? Well, just like the corpse, it's now okay to talk about how terrible the clown was too. Because before it would have been career suicide to spill the beans and commit an act of actual journalism. Ripping on Kamala now is about as risky as wearing leather chaps to a pride parade. Right, Dr. Drew?
Meanwhile, a lot of people were just relieved someone finally said it out loud, that listening to Kamala can feel like a TED Talk that accidentally drifted into a poetry slam halfway through. Her speeches often come across less like a clear vision and more like an improv class armed with flashcards and good intentions. Greg takes that feeling and turns it into his whole bit. He pulls the collective cringe and shapes it into a highlight reel of contradictions, delivered with a grin and a wink. The truth is, Kamala isn't hard to parody because she's political. She's hard to parody because the material already feels like parody on its own. Greg just shows up with a megaphone and says what many are thinking but hesitate to say. He calls out the performance without pretending it's deeper than it is, stripping away the polish and exposing the awkward gap where substance should be. In doing so, he turns it into something closer to satire than analysis, where style keeps tripping over meaning. And somewhere in the mix, he even revisits the greatest hits, the odd phrasing, the circular explanations, the nervous laughter that lands strangely. He doesn't need to exaggerate much. Reality already does most of the work.
I think it's very important, as you have heard from so many incredible leaders, for us at every moment in time, and certainly this one, to see the moment in time in which we exist and are present, and to be able to contextualize it, to understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past but the future.
You know, that's some bad weed. Generally, when people get high, they actually have some interesting thoughts. Not her.
That's what makes it feel clever. He isn't really inventing comedy, he's collecting it, like someone walking through a field of political mistakes and turning them into material. Every Kamala soundbite from the past year becomes another piece in his bigger picture of humor, almost like a mosaic titled, "How Did We End Up Here?" Even the way he wraps things up hits differently. No big speech, no dramatic outrage, just a shrug, a raised eyebrow, and the quiet sense that something unusual just happened on TV. Less a political analysis, more like watching something surreal you can't quite explain. By the end, it feels like a shared moment of confusion turned into comedy. Greg gives that feeling a shape, points at it, and lets the audience sit with it. And the surprising part is, it doesn't come off as cool. It's sharp, yes, but more puzzled than angry.
They were so paranoid about her public behavior, they held a fake party ahead of a DC dinner in 2022. Her aides even considered serving wine so she could practice with a glass or two, but decided not to. Good call. The only time Kamala stops after 2 glasses is when she switches to chugging Listerine.
Like a man who walked into a fine dining restaurant and got served a bowl of air, now trying to write a Yelp review without sounding unhinged. But where does that leave us? Kamala is still tripping through metaphors like a magician at a kid's party who forgot how the tricks work. And Greg Gutfeld is on the sidelines, popcorn in hand, pointing out that a pantsuit doesn't automatically equal clarity. He doesn't just roast her, he turns it into a kind of running satire, pulling humor straight from her own words. And as long as she keeps supplying the material, he'll keep showing up, smiling, commenting, and turning confusion into punchlines. Because if there's one thing funnier than the speeches themselves, it's watching Greg sit through them with his sanity intact and his sarcasm fully loaded. And honestly, someone has to.